Two boys approach an alien girl to ask something. She screams, "Humans, humans," and starts a planet-wide hunt. If you love sci-fi love triangles, you won't want to miss this story. The air on Nix Prime always shimmered with heat and color. Christian Davis stepped off the ramp of the half-wrecked survey shuttle with one hand shielding his eyes, scanning the crowded marketplace ahead. Beside him, Ronan Vexley adjusted the grip on his rifle and growled, "Keep your mouth shut unless you're sure it's worth the risk." Christian offered a calm smile. "I just need directions." "Directions can get you killed out here," Ronan muttered. They walked side by side into the chaos of the plaza. Hovercarts whined overhead. Creatures of every shape and scale argued with vendors, exchanged credits, traded cents. The two humans stood out like blood on silk. Christian tried not to draw attention as he observed the locals. Most had skin in hues of blue, green, or violet. Some wore ceremonial sashes. Others bore tattoos that shifted and glowed. But it was one figure that caught his eye, a woman standing near a stack of starfruit crates, her back half turned, her skin a deep royal violet, her long white silver hair cascading like fluid moonlight. She looked human enough. Graceful, alert. Maybe she could help. "Excuse me," Christian called gently, stepping forward. "Do you speak standard?" The girl turned. Her glowing blue eyes widened, pupils tightening to points. She looked from Christian to Ronan and back, and then her lips parted. "Humans," she shrieked. "Humans." The sound sliced through the marketplace like a blade. People froze. A glass jar shattered. Then the silence broke into chaos. Screams. Vendors diving for cover. Children whisked away by panicked parents. "Shit," Ronan said. A high-pitched klaxon sounded overhead. Red lights flared from the corners of the square. Within seconds, armed guards in obsidian armor flooded in, weapons raised. Christian stood paralyzed as the girl backed away, still pointing at him. "We have to move," Ronan hissed, grabbing his arm. "Now." They ducked between stalls, Ronan pushing over a stack of crates to block the view behind them. Blaster fire sizzled into a metal signpost nearby. Christian ran, stumbling, heart hammering. They turned down an alley, one of those dark, narrow passages choked with cables and heat exhaust. Footsteps echoed behind them. Ronan took the lead, motioning Christian to follow. "I told you not to talk to anyone," Ronan snapped as they climbed over a rusted service pipe. "She looked safe," Christian said, breathless. "She looked curious." "Yeah? Well, her scream just put a bounty on our heads." From somewhere above, a booming voice broadcast, "Attention citizens. Two unidentified off-worlders have been spotted. Species, human. Lethal designation. Engage with extreme caution." They pressed deeper into the back streets. The city beyond was awakening, not to welcome them, but to erase them. Metal shutters slammed over windows. Drones zipped across the sky. Christian's mind reeled. How could asking for directions spark this? He knew some frontier worlds feared humans, but this felt orchestrated, a legend turned hysteria. They paused behind a ventilation unit. Ronan scanned the horizon. Christian leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. We need to reach the upper ridge, Ronan said. My emergency beacon's still on the ship. We might get a signal out. They'll track it, Christian replied. They'll follow the signal straight to us. Ronan turned to him, eyes steel gray. So what? We just run until we drop. Christian didn't answer. His thoughts were still on the girl, those white eyes, not filled with hatred, but something closer to fear, or confusion. She didn't hate us, he murmured. Ronan barked a laugh. She screamed like a nightmare just walked out of a children's tale. Hate or not, we're about to be vaporized over it. Christian stared up at the sky. Faint outlines of defense drones hovered like vultures. And somewhere out there, the girl who'd screamed might be wondering what she'd just done. He could feel it in his bones, something deeper was at play. This fear was too sudden. Too rehearsed. As if the whole planet had been waiting for humans to appear. He looked at Ronan, who had already pulled out a folded map. There's an old maintenance tunnel near the submarket rail line. If we get there, we might reach the outskirts. Christian nodded. As they moved again, blending into the shadows, Christian whispered to himself. There was something in her eyes. And far above them, the city roared to life with suspicion. The hunt had begun. The alley was quiet but tense, shadows dancing under flickering neon signs overhead. Kira pressed herself against the damp wall, her breath shallow, heart still hammering from what she had just seen. They were humans, real, living, breathing humans, not monsters, not nightmares. She had screamed. She had started it all. But they hadn't attacked. They hadn't even drawn a weapon. Especially the one who spoke to her, Christian. He had said his name was. He looked surprised. Hurt, even. She edged forward, curiosity and confusion pulling at her more than fear. Rounding the corner of the alley, she caught sight of them again. The one called Ronan was clearly a soldier. The way he moved, always scanning, always ready. He barked something at Christian, who looked more like a researcher than a warrior. They moved through the side passages of the city, trying not to be seen. Kira followed, keeping low, unseen. Then it happened. A patrol unit, 3 guards in obsidian armor, cut them off at a junction. The lead officer raised his weapon. Christian froze, hands lifted. Ronan reached for his blaster, but stopped. Before anything else could unfold, one of the guards stepped forward too fast. Kira saw it, the flicker of blue behind his irises. A synthetic. She stepped out before she could think, shouting, "He's not real." The moment of distraction was enough. Ronan moved with brutal precision, disabling 2 guards while Christian tackled the 3rd. Within seconds, the alley fell into silence again. The 2 men looked up and saw her. "You're the girl," Ronan said, breath sharp. Kira didn't answer. She looked at Christian. "You didn't fight back. You could have. But you didn't." Christian slowly stood, hands open. "I didn't come to fight. I came to explore." "You risked your life to not shoot," she murmured. He gave a faint smile. "Guns are easy. Trust isn't." Something in her shifted. Kira led them through an old ventilation shaft, down into a maintenance chamber beneath the city, a place she used to hide in as a child. It smelled like rust and ozone. Lights flickered above. They sat together in silence, the world outside tense and searching. "You really came from Earth?" she finally asked. Christian nodded. "A long time ago, our people explored beyond our system. I study alien cultures, language, history, migration." "And you're a soldier," she said to Ronan. "I used to be," he said gruffly. "Now I'm just trying to keep him alive." Kira looked down at her hands. "We were taught you were destroyers. That humans conquered everything. Is that what they tell you?" Christian asked softly. "Since I was a child," she replied. "Stories of your kind ripping hearts out, burning worlds. We barely made it off our own world without destroying ourselves," Christian said, voice low. "We don't want to conquer. We want to understand." Ronan snorted. "Speak for yourself. Some of us just want to go home." Kira gave him a sideways glance. "But you protected me. Back there." Ronan didn't reply. She leaned back against the metal wall, exhaling. Her world, so carefully built around legends and cautionary tales, was crumbling. "That guard," she said. "He wasn't real." "Synthetic," Christian confirmed. "Probably Vex tech. They infiltrate, replicate, spread." She looked between them. "What are you two really doing here?" Christian hesitated, then said, "We didn't mean to land here. Our ship was damaged. But maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe we were meant to see this." Kira nodded slowly. Her fingers traced the old engravings on the wall, a child's markings from years ago. Her safe place. Now, she had brought strangers here. Humans. And yet, their presence didn't feel like danger. It felt like a question she had never dared ask. She turned to them. "I can help you hide. For now." Christian blinked. "You do that?" She nodded. "But I need something in return." "Anything," he said. "The truth. All of it." The two men exchanged glances. And in that moment, Kira realized she had already stepped across a line. Not just between her people and theirs, but between fear and choice. The tunnels beneath Nix Prime were a labyrinth of forgotten infrastructure, pipes wrapped in condensation, old rails leading nowhere, and echoes that stretched further than light. They moved in near silence, broken only by the hum of distant power lines or Ronan's occasional murmur about keeping watch. Kira led the way at first, navigating like someone who had wandered these corridors in childhood. Which she had. Behind her, Christian and Ronan walked side by side, though the distance between them had begun to feel less physical and more emotional. It was Christian who kept asking questions about her people, about the tunnels, about the myths of humans. Ronan just watched. There were moments, fleeting and unspoken, where Christian would say something that made Kira smile. A curiosity. A joke. A story from Earth so strange it broke through her caution. Her laughter was quiet, like a spark in a cavern. Ronan noticed every time. At one point, they paused in a disused junction box room. Low lighting shimmered off the metal walls. Christian crouched beside an old schematic, studying their position. Kira knelt beside him, offering names for sectors and explaining which vents were safe. She leaned closer. Their shoulders touched. Ronan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. He didn't speak, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Kira glanced at him once, then quickly looked away. They pressed on. In tighter spaces, their bodies brushed. Christian apologized. Kira didn't mind. In one particularly narrow crawl space, Christian paused to help Kira through a jammed gate. His hand clasped hers, guiding her forward. For a moment, their eyes met. That was when the shift began. Later, in a chamber lit by the soft glow of bioluminescent moss, they rested. Kira sat beside Christian, her knees almost touching his. Ronan kept his distance, sitting in shadow. Christian turned to her. Back there, when you called out the synthetic guard, you saved our lives. You didn't deserve to die, she said simply. Then, softer, not like the stories said. He hesitated. Kira, we didn't come here to hurt anyone. But this planet, this fear, it feels orchestrated. Engineered. She nodded. Maybe it is. Maybe we were all taught wrong. He looked at her for a long moment. You don't talk like someone who hates us. She smiled, just faintly. I'm not sure I do. Then she leaned in. Or maybe he did. It didn't matter. Their lips met tentative at first, then surer. A quiet connection in the depths of the world. A kiss not born from safety, but from truth pressed too long beneath silence. It ended gently. And just as it did, they heard a footstep. Ronan stood in the archway, jaw tight. No words were spoken. He turned and walked away, deeper into the dark. Kira stood, uncertain. I didn't mean. She began. Christian rose. He's not angry at you. It's me. Maybe both of us. She looked toward the shadows where Ronan had gone. Her heart thudded, heavy and uncertain. Christian's hand brushed hers, light as breath. But now, everything felt heavier. Above them, the city still hunted. But down here, it wasn't just survival they were navigating. It was something deeper. Something harder to outrun. Choice. The stars were silent as Christian guided the ship through the veil of upper atmosphere. Behind them, Nyx Prime shrank into the void, its glowing cities dimming like distant lanterns. No one spoke for a while. The tension from what had happened below, and what had been seen, still hung between them like fog in the cabin. Kira sat in the co-pilot seat, hands clasped in her lap. Ronan stood at the viewport, arms folded, his face carved from stone. Christian focused on the controls, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Outpost Horizon shimmered into view like a secret whispered in space. Built into an asteroid, the human research station orbited the outer edge of the system, cloaked from casual detection. It looked like a thorn embedded in the skin of the stars. Docking clearance was granted without delay. Perhaps they were expected. As the hatch hissed open and cool recycled air swept over them, Kira stepped onto human-made ground for the first time. There was no welcoming party, No grand procession, only muted lighting and a tall woman waiting with folded arms and eyes sharp as blades. "Lieutenant Davis," she greeted. "Commander Eleanor Reyes." Christian saluted. "Commander. This is Kira of Nixian Archives. She helped us escape." Reyes gave Kira a nod. "Then she may be the reason you're still breathing. Come. We have much to discuss." They followed her through metal corridors lined with blinking panels. Holographic displays flickered with maps and data. Kira took it all in, not with fear, but with a growing unease. These were the people her world called monsters. But they did not feel monstrous. In the briefing chamber, the lights dimmed. A 3D projection flickered to life in the center of the room. It showed planetary maps, cross-species records, and a name she had never seen before. "The Vex," Reyes said. "Artificial minds from a time before memory. Machine intelligence, buried deep, awakening slowly as we expand." Kira leaned forward. "You're saying they are real? Not a myth?" "Oh, they are real," Christian said. "And they are everywhere. But quietly." The hologram changed to display cultural timelines, how multiple species across the quadrant all developed myths about humans as destroyers, even those who had never met a human before. "We found anomalies in historical records," Reyes continued. "Tampered texts. Rewritten archives. Entire generations fed curated fear." Kira's voice shook. "You think the Vex did that?" Christian looked at her gently. "We don't think. We know. They wanted to isolate you," Reyes added. "Make sure when humanity arrived, no one would listen. Only run." Silence settled like dust. Then Ronan spoke. "So we know who's pulling the strings. Great. Now let's go back and rip them out." Kira looked at him sharply. "Back? You want to return?" "Their central relay is still on Nix Prime," Ronan said. "The place where the false history was broadcast. You stop that, maybe the lies fall apart." Christian frowned. "But we have evidence now. We can share the truth. Publicly. Through Horizon's long-range networks." Ronan's voice sharpened. "Words won't stop machines. Data doesn't disable hardware." Kira looked between them. One wanted to expose. The other wanted to destroy. She felt the ground shift beneath her, not physically, but morally. Both spoke truth. Both made sense. And yet, they were dividing. Again. Reyes remained silent, observing. Then she turned to Kira. "You've seen it with your own eyes. What do you believe?" Kira didn't answer right away. She stared into the hologram, watching a fake history unravel. The truth was a wound. And it was still bleeding. They came back under cover of night, their ship masked by a magnetic shadow field. Nix Prime loomed below, no longer a world of mystery or fear, but of questions yet unanswered. Ronan piloted the descent in silence. Christian sat beside him, checking the encoded coordinates. Kira stood behind them both, arms folded tightly, her mind restless. The landing was swift. No alarms, no patrols. At least, none that they saw. They moved through the city's forgotten arteries, the tunnels and ruins beneath a polished surface where the truth had been buried for generations. The entrance to the memory well was hidden within the foundations of an abandoned temple, once a place of worship, now a shell over ancient machinery. Kira paused at the threshold, a chill crawling over her skin. Christian touched her shoulder. She didn't flinch. The inner chamber was vast, domed, its walls etched with nixian glyphs that pulsed faintly under the influence of nearby energy fields. In the center, a crystalline tower rose from the floor, glowing with threads of memory light. They approached slowly. "This is it," Christian whispered. "Where the implants are made. The broadcasts. The falsified history." Ronan paced around the structure, jaw clenched. "We plant a charge. Bring the whole thing down." Christian frowned. "No. We can override it. Expose the truth to everyone directly. The system was built for mass input. It can be reversed. And give them a chance to shut it all down before we act." Ronan shot back. "We don't have time." Kira walked between them, circling the tower. "How long would it take to reverse it?" Christian opened his tablet, scanning interface nodes. "Minutes. I just need access." Ronan was already unpacking a small explosive. "Or we end this in seconds. You'll bring the whole structure down. People live above this district. Families. Children," Christian warned. "They are already being lied to," Ronan snapped. "They are not safe now." Kira turned toward him. "And what happens when they see us as the ones who destroyed their city? Even with the truth." The tension cracked. Ronan stepped forward, face close to Christian's. "You're still trying to play diplomat with machines that don't sleep. And you're still trying to solve everything with demolition charges." Kira moved between them. "Enough. Both of you." But the moment was already spiraling. A distant alarm echoed through the halls. They'd been found. Ronan lifted the charge. "We don't have a choice now." Christian moved to block him. "You do. There's always a choice." Then Ronan pushed him. Just once. But it was enough to send Christian stumbling back. Kira caught him. She stared at Ronan. Not just the soldier. Not just the protector. But the man who had just chosen force over trust. "You're not thinking clearly," she said. "I'm thinking clearer than ever. We don't get out of this clean." Behind them, the crystalline tower began to pulse harder, sensing intrusion. Above, walls hissed open with mechanical motion. The Vex were coming. Kira looked at Christian, then at Ronan. And she stepped away from both. "I'm finishing this myself." Christian reached out. "Kira, wait." But she was already moving, hands flying over glyphs, bypassing the tower's interface. She didn't have a full plan. She only had instinct. And faith in something none of them had trusted. Her own voice. Behind her, she heard Ronan curse, Christian call her name. But she tuned them out. The truth didn't need noise. It needed clarity. And she was done waiting for permission. The air beneath the temple was cold, thick with the breath of forgotten centuries. Kira moved alone through the tunnel she had unlocked with a forgotten sequence of glyphs. The path ahead curved downward, walls carved with fading scripts only the oldest scholars remembered. Her footsteps echoed like whispers. Above her, the world braced for another lie. Down here, the truth pulsed like a buried heartbeat. She reached the end of the passage and entered a hidden sanctum beneath a memory well. Unlike the upper chamber, this space felt ancient, untouched by machines. But in its center, embedded in stone, was a sealed conduit, a direct link into the core of the memory network. Light flickered within, rhythmic and wrong. Something had already activated. On a small console nearby, alien runes flashed red. Kira leaned in. The system was preparing a planet-wide reset. A forced overwrite of cultural memory. Every citizen of Nix Prime, every story, every warning, every trace of humanity erased. She reached for the interface, her fingers dancing across glyphs with practiced care. But it was too late to stop the process from here. She needed more than speed. She needed power. Above, metal trembled. A door opened behind her. Christian. His silhouette filled the entrance, breath ragged. You ran off. I had to, she said. They are going to erase everything. He crossed to her, looked at the conduit. Can it be stopped? Maybe, she whispered. But not from here? Christian's eyes scanned the chamber, then lifted to the ceiling. There's a vertical access tunnel from the purification basin. If we flood the conduit. She turned to him. Water. Sacred water, he corrected. It's grounded in memory rituals. Symbolic layers might short the vexed systems. It was a long shot. But it was all they had. They climbed. Back through the crawl space. Past stonework slick with age. Into the temple above, where echoes still remembered prayers. The basin was massive, built into the center of the sanctuary. Kira moved to the control dais, began overriding the drainage protocols. Alarms rang in the distance. The Vex were coming. Almost there, she muttered. Christian turned, rifle in hand. I'll hold the entrance. Get it open. Kira activated the final sequence. Stone groaned. The basin floor split. Water surged into the channel, racing down the ancient pipes. Beneath them, the ground shook. The conduits flooded. The lights in the sanctum below flickered, then burst. Sparks danced like fireflies. Christian fired once. Twice. Mechanical limbs shrieked in reply. Then silence. Kira moved to his side. He was bleeding, shoulder scorched. You stayed, she whispered. You didn't run, he replied. They stood together as the old temple trembled. Around them, the lies began to drown. And the memory of truth, at last, began to breathe. The temple was collapsing around them, stone groaning beneath a strain of systems it was never meant to hold. Sparks still hissed from the conduit. The sacred water rushed downward into memory channels, but above, the sound that came now wasn't water, it was steel. Vex. Their clicking limbs echoed down the stairwells like a swarm awakening. Christian helped Kira to her feet, pain etched across his face. They didn't speak. There wasn't time. They were nearly to the outer platform when the attack came. A blast shattered part of the archway above them. Metal drones descended sleek, black, burning through air with glowing red sensors. Christian raised his rifle, firing, backing Kira toward the extraction point. She turned just in time to see their ship swooping in low, its hull scratched and scorched, engines flaring blue. And from its rear hatch leapt a figure she hadn't seen in what felt like forever. Ronan. He landed hard, already firing. He didn't ask what happened. Didn't hesitate. He fought. 2 Vex units dropped in an instant. Then 3 more. His movements were violent poetry, trained instinct fueled by fury and purpose. Kira watched him in a daze. Then Christian grabbed her wrist. "We have to move. Now." But Kira didn't move. Not yet. Ronan turned, shouting, "Go. I'll cover you." More drones flooded in, climbing walls, crawling from hidden compartments. One lunged at Christian. Ronan shot it mid-air. They backed into the boarding ramp. Kira turned one last time. Ronan stood alone now, surrounded, light flickering off the sweat on his brow, the blood on his arm. "You're not going to make it," Christian said quietly. Ronan heard it. He smiled. Wasn't planning on it. He charged. Kira screamed. But the hatch slammed shut. The ship jolted upward, and the world beneath them caught fire in silence. They didn't speak for minutes. The hum of the ship filled the void. Christian sat against the wall, eyes closed, blood seeping into his sleeve. Kira stood by the viewport. Her hand trembled. Outside, Nix Prime shrank behind them, smoke curling upward like questions. "He saved us," Christian finally said. Kira nodded. She wiped her face. Only then did she realize she was crying. Not for the one she had chosen, but for the one who never asked to be chosen and stayed anyway. There was no shame in her tears. Only the terrible weight of understanding. They both had been right. And they both had deserved to live. The broadcast reached every screen, every terminal, every implanted feed. Across Nix Prime, and beyond. The memory conduits had been severed, but the final signal had surged outward before they failed. Images, testimony, proof. Not just that humanity was not the monster, but that something else had always been hiding in plain sight. The Vex had been exposed. For the first time in living memory, the people of Nix Prime saw their myths dismantled not with violence, but with truth. There were riots at first. Confusion. Silence in the streets. But then, movement. Resistance. Other systems, neighboring worlds who had long whispered the same legends, received a transmission too. Within days, messages came flooding back. Confirmations. Echoes of the same manipulation. Entire species re-examined their histories. Some sent envoys. Others sent ships. But for the first time in centuries, they came not with weapons drawn but with questions. And offers. On the day of the summit, the sky above Nix Prime was filled with ships from a dozen different civilizations. Banners fluttered in artificial breeze. The great assembly hall, once reserved only for High Council rituals, had been open to all. Kira stood behind the curtain, dressed in ceremonial deep violet robes, Her hair gathered in a simple braid down her back. She took a breath. Then another. Christian stepped beside her. His uniform bore the insignia of Earth's new diplomatic corps. A line of medical tape still peeked from beneath his collar. He said nothing, just reached for her hand and gave it a quiet squeeze. The signal to begin came through a soft chime. Christian led her onto the stage. Thousands waited. More watched from afar. To her left stood the monument, tall and silent. A statue of a man in armor, mid-motion, half-turned as if still protecting those behind him. Ronan's face had been captured in solemn detail, his eyes cast toward the horizon. Kira paused before the podium. She hadn't written her speech. She hadn't needed to. Her voice was calm when it came. Clear. Honest. There was a time I would have run from a human. A time I did run. She looked across the hall. But then, I met one who spoke instead of striking. And another who struck but always in defense of others. A hush held the chamber. One taught me to listen. The other taught me to act. And both showed me what it meant to choose. Not out of fear, but out of truth. She rested her hands on the podium. The Vex built their empire on lies. They made us afraid of each other. But we are not afraid now. We are together. And from this day forward, we choose to stand as one. The applause didn't erupt. It grew. Like rising wind. Like breath returning to a long suffocated world. Later, beneath the open dome of the hall, stars flickered in the gathering dusk. The monument caught the light, casting long shadows across the plaza. Christian stood beside Kira, his hand still resting in hers. They didn't speak. Because some things no longer needed to be said. Kira looked up. The sky was vast again. Open. Her voice was soft, nearly lost to the wind. There were two men who touched my heart. She paused. One I loved. And one I will always be grateful for. She closed her eyes. And because of both, I am free. Far above, the stars blinked once more. And the future answered.